more obscure because a lot of elements of the country have been reopening. They have or been opened, depending on where you're at, and returning to life in some way, not always, depending on where you're at. If you're in the New Yorks of the world or Californias of the world, maybe you're still going through a bunch of bullshit. But he's going to, as to be expected, start to fade. And he's clinging on to these, I think, to a lot of this. I think he's a narcissist. I know some people will disagree with me on that, but I actually genuinely think that he's a narcissist. And I believe that he is basking in this and wants to bask in the glory of being a media figure. This is why he can't stop doing interviews and be coming on TV. I believe that he actually enjoys this. He enjoys being asked to throw the disastrous first pitches. He enjoys being on a cover of magazines, appearing on sort of these talk shows, all of that sort of stuff. I believe he enjoys that and bask in it. He didn't get that for much of his career, despite being a public official, if you will, or a government worker. Let's say that, and a government employee for as long as he's been one. He's been around forever. He's 80 some years old. But now he has a lot of attention on him. And I think that a lot of what he would say was just him kicking the can down the road because he wanted to continue to be in the limelight. I genuinely believe that. And this is why he was taking positions that are generally antithetical with each other. Back to back, like it made no sense. There was no science that was backing some of the positions that he was having. It was just up and changing stuff, and things didn't make sense. And then even when he'd be questioned by like the Rand Pauls or the Jim Jordans of the world, he get pissy when he would be basically confronted in the fact that this doesn't make sense. You're either being a hypocrite or you're contradicting himself. Or he's contradicting himself. But Dr. Fauci had some more things to say about this, and he got a little bit of a blowback here. Let's discuss it. Covering this from the Blaze, let's give credit to Carlos Garcia. Dr. Anthony Fauci, let's go here. Online blowback after saying there was no doubt that children as young as 3 years old should all be wearing masks. Like, again, narcissist. And then when you consider his rhetoric when he says things like, what did he say? When you're criticizing me, you're basically criticizing science itself because I am the science. That's Fauci, apparently. Not quite yet though, Mr. Fauci. Let's take a look. Talking on MSNBC interview where he was discussing guidelines for children in the upcoming school year. You know that children under the age of 12 who are not eligible to get the vaccines generally do not get sick, don't get COVID, or don't get as ill with it. But what does this spread mean for them for children under the age of 12? What's the timeline for when they might become eligible? That's funny that they're finally starting to acknowledge the fact that children's risk when it comes to COVID is virtually zero. And it's even more interesting that they're actually even asking Fauci, MSNBC of all people. Took him a year and a half. Also saying, this is what I guess Fauci had to say in reply. Well, a couple of questions. And the answers are the children who are not able to get vaccinated because of their age should follow their parents. Their parents should follow with them the guidelines of the CDC. Fuck the CDC. Anyway, that unvaccinated children of a certain age greater than 3 years old, so 3 or older, should be wearing masks. No doubt about that. He says that's the way to protect them from getting infected because if they do, they can spread the infection to someone else. Again, I would love to see the receipts on the like that they are actually like notable in terms of or notorious in their spreading of it, because from all indications, it seems to point to the idea that the schools certainly weren't, which again, why you want to drop your kid off at a public indoctrination camp, I don't know. I thought that this was an opportunity for these milquetoast ass conservatives to take an axe to the public school education system, but that's not what they did. Instead, they begged for the schools to be reopened. Goes to show that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Nonetheless, there seems to be not a lot of proof that it was spreading through these schools anyway. So what are they basing this logic on? The idea that they should be wearing masks. So we got a double whammy here. One, their risk is basically zero. If you've seen the numbers and you looked at the numbers, people that are young, very young, in their case, it's almost zero in terms of their hospitalization rates as well as their fatality rates. There's a couple of, few of, if you will, exceptions, but for the most part, it's been virtually zero, as well as the spreading throughout or outbreaks in the positive cases when it comes to COVID-19 in these kids at these schools. So what are they basing that on? Even if it does come from the CDC, where does it come from in terms of their guidelines aside from because reasons? That's effectively what the policy is, because reasons. We're going to make low-risk children suffer to protect unvaccinated adults. We have to begin caring about the kids. And this is what Rory Cooper said. A lot of people are going to the social media to say this. And the kids were sacrificed in this from the get-go because we knew early on, before it even got here, we knew early on that the kids' risk here was virtually zero. But remember, the whole idea was, well, they might spread it to somebody that might spread it to somebody that might spread it to someone that is 90 years old. Therefore, you must sacrifice the youth to try to save the old folk. When you had a lot of old folk that were like, why the fuck would I want their lives to be ruined for the sake of me who has lived this long life? And this is why it was always disingenuous when they tried to make it seem as if, well, we're doing it for the betterment of the senior citizens. We're doing it for the betterment of the elderly population. And if you oppose our policies, you oppose the elderly population, when it was the elderly population, a lot of people that were of the elderly population, some of you guys' grandmothers and grandmas, who were like, don't do this for me. Don't have to ruin your life because of me. I've lived my life. If this is the way that I go, this is the way that I go. But don't try to stop everything it is that you're doing for me. Some of your guys' grandmas and grandmas would absolutely say that. And then anyway, you had Grandma Killer over there in New York City, dropping them off as ticking time bombs in the most vulnerable population. Anyway, at the nursing homes. So what do we have here? It's just crazy talk by way of Fauci. Like, it's insane. The risk, you know what the risk is. And this is why it's important for folks to understand what's going on. I know a lot of y'all you think everybody to the, it ain't even on a political deal, but though some of it is, it's more of, well, this person doesn't agree and isn't lining up to get a vaccine. They are in opposition to mask mandates and vaccine mandates. Therefore, they're bad people that want everybody to die. Now, that's how they geared the conversation for a long time there. And obviously, that never was the case. Simply put, I know you like to think that the science rests upon one person and one group of people, obviously working for the government for the most part. But none of it's really sound, and they still have been yet been able to prove what it is that even though they have these policies and they're putting these guidelines in place, they're not generally backed on anything. Even with, for example, when the CDC changed their position on the mask mandates and who should be wearing masks, vaccinated versus unvaccinated and all that. When they changed all that, there wasn't like a new study or new information, because they were like 1 week were like this, and then they up and changed when they came out publicly and saying, okay, we're changing our guidelines here and what we actually recommend. There was no new data that was presented in which they said, okay, here was why. This was the study with the random control trial that showed why this policy makes sense. It was arbitrary, much like this right here. Arbitrary. It's just because reasons is effectively it. And now, because reasons, they'll try to make it make sense that, well, they could spread it to someone else, but where's the proof of that? Other side, yeah, it's an infectious disease, but where's the objective proof that that age group, whether you considering their viral load, considering how old they are, considering the risk, what proof, what are the receipts on this? It's just because reasons. And if you are in opposition to them, then you are in opposition to the science, because according to Fauci, he is the science. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.